and that makes us less productive, that makes us less everything because we're concerned about the external things instead of like really focusing on what makes us happy, doing a great job, advancing in all of the things that we wanted to do, but that nowadays it's more difficult to actually, follow that trajectory or roadmap.
When it was suggested to me that, hey, you got to meet Luis Carbo, like regional director of ProVisors, when you got to meet Luis, when you and I spoke, I was, the bulk of our conversation was about, is there or will there or could there be a ProVisors group in my area, something that I might be interested in joining, and we never got to what I was originally told I needed to talk to you about, which is just your view on, I don't know if it's necessarily networking or view on. You probably know more about what I'm talking about than I do, right? This view of how do you do it in this day and age, and I feel like it's even more important as we become less connected in this digital world. We're more connected digitally, but less connected relationally, and so that was the idea, Patsy. The idea of having Luis on today is to talk about that. What is it? How is it? What? Because everybody that I feel like I missed out by not having that conversation with you, and everyone that I've talked to who has had that conversation with you, Luis, says it's amazing and it's enlightening, and some have even used the word transformational. So no pressure at all.
No pressure. well, what I always say, Patrick, is that it's the evolution of what we're experiencing, right? And I think that when you start looking at cross generationally, right, how we assess things, right, how we see the generation of our parents and grandparents, kind of like passing on the torch to us, and we've already experienced things, and we have a good understanding of how the world operates and how we want to operate in those realities. But knowing that, our relevancy, generational relevancy starts, fading away as the new generations start showing up with their own ideas, their own understanding of the world. I'm a Gen Xer. So we have there's something beautiful about Gen Xers in the sense that we experience life pre-internet and post-internet, right? And we can actually go back to other generations of what it was in the Industrial Revolution or, boomers after World War II, right? The world has been created and we've adjusted to the world in so many different ways. And it's important that sometimes we leave that reality that we know and understand how it shifted from boomers to Gen Xers, millennials, Gen Zers. And as we continue, seeing the world around us changing, becoming more global, becoming more complex. Some may say more connected, I would say less connected. How consumer behavior is changing, how political, components are shaping the world that we live in right now. And I think that is a fascinating conversation because there's a lot to cover when it comes to how we transition personally and professionally, how we see the world, right? And how do we help others understand that the legacy that we leave behind is not taken for granted. And that is an opportunity to learn from, what we haven't been able to accomplish. And the goal for all of us is always to leave a better world to the future generations. The question is, are we doing that right now? That's a big question mark.
Big question mark.
And I think that, it's conversations that we need to be having around leadership, around, the corporate values, the inflection points in the economy, technology. I think that is creating a lot of anxiety and a lot of uncertainty. And I don't think that we've been in a situation like this where there's so many moving pieces. And you have to analyze it from, 20 different angles to figure out, what the future looks like. And are we excited about the future? And how, if we are excited about the future, how do we make that contagious and positive for the new generations not to look at the despair or the ambiguity or the challenges that they're seeing. So there's a lot to cover, right? But, you know, that's life at the end of the day, and I love talking about life.
Well, and I'm struck by just in the 30 seconds how you kept filling the bucket, you kept expanding, with technology and leadership, and yet you started out by saying we're in many ways less connected. So we're wanting more exploration and engagement, but we're less connected, especially as professionals, I think. So that is a conundrum right there.
It is. It's the conundrum of pre-pandemic and post-pandemic.
Yep.
But what we do know is that, looking at any research study, since the inception of social media and all of these things that were supposed to get us more connected, right? What it did is actually, lock us, behind a computer, right? In anonymity, right? When you could say anything that you want without any consequences, right? It's just like being behind, your car when you're driving, right? And saying whatever you want to say because there's nothing that anyone can do about it, right? You are in a safe space. It's very different when, I get to be with, Patrick or with you, Patsy, face to face, right? Establish connection and see the humanity around it, right? So those windshields and walls that we continue building, digital walls, are not creating more connection, are creating quantity of connection, not quality.
I like that distinction.
So yeah, so we talk about networks like LinkedIn, right? It's just like I always ask. It's like it doesn't matter how many connections you have. 5,000, 25,000, and people brag about that. It's like my question is not that. My question is out of that network, right? What percentage of those folks are folks that you know extremely well, that you can vouch for them, that if someone comes to you and says, "Hey, can you introduce me?" You're like, "Yes, of course." It's less than 5%.
Hey, if you're a CEO, you've probably felt this before. Your leadership team is talented, you've got smart people and really good intentions, and yet somehow they're just not always moving in the same direction. Now, you shouldn't have to be, as the CEO, the translator, the referee, and the decision bottleneck all at once. Because when your leadership team gets truly aligned, execution stops feeling like a grind. Now, if that's something you want help with, visit thelionsgroupconsulting.com or call us at 319-541-0488. Yeah, and yet you're right on so much of that. And yet, how do we measure our effectiveness in creating this online persona is in the number of followers or the number of likes and shares. And let's talk honestly. That's something we always are thinking about and talking about as podcasters. It's like, all right, how do we get more ears on the show? How do we get more eyes on what we're doing? When really what you're, much like in anything you put out, it is so often it's quantity and not quantity and not quality. How do you instead build with your relationships? I think I learned that early on. This is a story when you and I did speak, Luis. I said I'm gonna have to remember to tell this story when we come together about how the first almost 2 decades of my career I was a W-2 employee. So I worked for large companies and I went to work every day and never thought about networking. I never, you don't network when you work for a large company, or unless you're in unless you're in a customer facing or like a business development kind of role. Most of us just went to work and you work with the people that you work with and you see the people that you see every day. And so then when I took the leap to start my own business, I had no idea how to network, or at least I actually didn't think I did. I think the concepts are the same. It really is just about building relationships because even inside a large company, you're building relationships, you're building friendships. You're as you said, you're building people that know and like and trust you and would recommend you to somebody else in the organization. Right? So you're building that. It's not about knowing all 10,000 people you work with. It's about having really good relationships with the 10 or 15 that you might interact with on the biggest basis, the most often. But I thought that networking was, I got really bad advice from Google. I know that never happens, but I was the guy, I'd started my own business and I went to a networking event and I was terrified. I had no idea what to do. Actually, the first handful that I went, I just stood in the corner and hid because I was just terrified. I didn't know what to do, didn't know how to do it. When I finally realized this is stupid. I'm never gonna, run a successful business if I can't network. I got the advice I got from Google was, well, you need an elevator pitch. People are going to ask you, what do you do? And so how do you boil that down into a succinct paragraph? So I did. And every elevator pitch has a close at the end, right? So I was that I'm so embarrassed about it today. I was the guy when somebody would ask me what I do or who I was, I would launch into the elevator pitch and with a close at the end. And it was just, this will shock you, but it didn't work. No one purchased anything from me at any of those networking
Not
events.
surprised whatsoever.
It was like so embarrassing. And thankfully, I'll never forget. I'll say his name. Richard Bourne was this amazingly kind person who let me close him, and then said, "Hey, let's go for coffee." And so we set up coffee for, I don't know, a couple days or a week later. And he's like, "Let me help you," and really just flipped it upside down and in the kindest, gentlest way said it's really just about making connections. And he gave me some tips. It's like, but not closing, like throw that away, which was a relief in a sense because I hated doing it and it wasn't working anyway. So I don't know what that means for anything other than
it's relevant because that's what I call the old paradigm of networking and
Yep.
the new paradigm that we're living right now. I think that, I'm curious about, all of these things that, as people, we know that we need
Yes.
to create community, to create success, to create, a strong personal and professional foundation, right? We all go through the similar realities at different times. It's kind of like, we all have to go through that process, whether it's college or whether it's, marriage or whether it's whatever it may be, But to me, it was like, wow, we we are born in this place, we're floating, in an orb in the middle of space,
right.
and we have all of kind of like these rules around what happiness and success means, and we all follow it, right? Without question, until we start awakening, right, and maturing in the way that is like, this doesn't make any sense, right? So it's just like, for me, it was like, there are things that we were never taught that should be part of any curriculum because at the end of the day, these are the tools. You can be extremely smart, well educated, well traveled, and all that stuff. But if you don't have, to me, like three main things that we were not taught how to do is, first of all, how to connect, right? And how to do it in a way that is effective, right? This elevator pitch and things like that, that's turning us into robots.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mechanic way of connecting, I don't believe in the elevator pitch or like, I believe in connection, talk about something that we'll find and then you get the introvert versus extrovert. Like people, when I tell them that I am an introvert, they don't believe me. But I was just like you, Patrick. I remember going to my first events and I was in the corner, terrified. And I saw all of these social butterflies just going around, and I was like, I would never be able to do that. So I had to learn to get out of my comfort zone and actually, connect. And it was tough to actually do that. I'm very grateful that I was at that point in talent acquisition. So I was forced to talk to random people. But then as I continue, going through it, it's just like I was building my business. It's just like, okay, now, I'm making money, I'll do this. But, no one ever taught me how to manage, grow, and protect that money and how to invest it properly. So there's like a financial literacy, issue in this country
Yeah.
when people don't know, about anything, right? The same goes with your own insurance, right? You don't even know how you're insured, your home, you're just like, it's like every time there's something that we just go for it and we just jump in and dive into it. And then it's like, whoa, time to take a couple of step back and realize. And the same with finding a job, right? I would always tell it's just like we've been taught to find a job that we need, not that we
Yep.
want,
Well
in
said.
the way that we do things. We've always kind of like are okay with whatever is thrown our way, right? And then we convince ourselves that it's our dream job, and it's like, is that the job that you really wanted? Is that the career that you really want? Is that the impact that you want to create? We have more control on those variables. However, right, we let anxiety and we let, the immediacy of kind of like, we find it very difficult to actually find quiet and peace to assess, make sure that we are analyzing things, that we're moving in the right direction, and that we are convinced that we're heading in the right direction with the right purpose, and that that's going to contribute to our personal, professional life, to our families. Is all intertwined, right? A bad decision impacts our entire ecosystem. A good decision impacts our entire ecosystem in a good or positive or bad way. But I think that to me has always been like own your success. Don't delegate that to anyone. Everything starts with you and ends with you. Whatever you want to do, go with it with conviction, right? Not because you are certain that it's going to work. Nobody knows that. But it's clear that when you do that with love and passion, right, and you believe even if you fail, the lessons that you've learned will propel you to create the next opportunity for you rather than hiding and being like, oh my, I just got this job because that's the one that I got, and I'm unhappy because I'm going to get a paycheck. That is not enough, right? To
Right.
build success and happiness in our lives. And those words are always very heavy, right? Because if I ask you what success means to you or what happiness means to you, it's going to be a completely different thing, right? But somehow we all think that, success is having that job, having that title, having a good wage so you can afford a house, a car, right? And then we realize when we hit our 40s and we start having what we call these, midlife crisis, which I call it more like, we're just awakening, We've already had enough
I
experience
like
to be
that.
like, whew, I've done all of this and I still feel, you know, dissatisfied. I've lived all of these things and I'm still like, what do I do now with, with my second chapter, right? So it's that redefining of your purpose every time. It doesn't need to be, the seasons of life can be very short or can be very long, right?
Yep.
Right.
But I always believe that you are one decision away from changing your life and you can do it anytime, anywhere, but you need to have a clear
Yep.
plan around it. And people don't spend the time putting that plan. They want to get from point A to point B quickly, and sometimes it takes very slow, cautious plan and pragmatic approach to be like, I'm in the right way, and internally I'm feeling that I'm in, because it's filling my tank with energy, right?
Well said.
That's what purpose means, and you can apply it to everything in your life.
Well said. Yeah, I find there are two questions I ask people frequently is what do you want? That really, then like a two by four. And what kind of environment do you want to work in? And people don't know how to answer either one of those questions.
How much do you pay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much time do I get off? Yes.
So you see now from an HR perspective, right? The
Yeah.
transformation that we're experiencing is massive. right? Because now, how we used to operate, right? Our generation was more around like, yes, come here and you can retire with us. You tell that
Right.
to millennials and Gen Zers, and they're gonna run, right? They're looking for experiences. We were looking for, consistency and stability, while the new generations are looking for experiences. They're just not willing to go through that process. They don't assess, the beautiful campus and the brand and the free drinks and the napping rooms and all of these things that were created for us to be like, we're going to give you balance in your life because we know that it's important. They want to work in any way they want, and they want to have diversity in their experiences. So to me, that is a question that I have in terms of whether or not we are at a point that the corporate America model,
Yeah, that's good.
right, with the combination of technology and everything that is happening, is becoming less appealing,
Yeah.
which means a narrower, pool of candidates who want to continue doing that with less money, less benefits, and more hours. Because if AI is doing something for us, it's creating productivities, but those productivities are not lowering the amount of output in hours that we're putting. It's just making us do more and more and more.
Yeah.
So the time always increases, and it should be the opposite. Technology should be helping us, be more effective at what we do. Do less admin work, so we can actually create more connections, elevate our value as a professional, where I can be in front of my clients, right? Having more connections, adding strategy to it, not mundane things about like, that's what AI should be doing for us. But unfortunately, eh, this concept of productivity is about how much you can do with the amount allocated. And it's like we end up doing less and less quality work because we have so much to do, and it doesn't matter how much help we get. We're still overwhelmed. We're still tired,
Yep.
right? And we still can't find that balance that we're all looking for.
Luis, here's what we know about our audience, the people who listen to this show, kind of fall into two camps, and so I want to ask like two questions and have you speak to each one of them. The first is the founder, the owner, the CEO, right? The business owner or the business leader or the senior leader who just heard what you just said about what people are looking for, and fewer people are looking for what it used to be like, and the ones who still opt in for that are surrounded by all of these stories of people who have broken out of the tradition. And so there's this constant challenge of like, should I be doing the traditional or should I go in that? So how do you advise the frustrated CEO or the founder, the senior leader, the owner on how to adjust to stay relevant, to stay appealing to that generation? And it's not even a generation. I feel like Gen Z has swayed a lot of us to want work with purpose, to want work-life balance. So it's no longer a characteristic of a generation. I think it's a characteristic of it's a growing desire that we all have. So what advice do you have for that? And then, and I realize this is bad interviewing. You're not supposed to ask two questions at once, but I'm gonna anyway because it's our show. We can do what we want. That energy that you were talking about, that like purpose, and so much of that I think comes from within. Like you strike me as you may be an introvert, but I get the sense that it's how you view things. You look for the positives, right? You look for impacting your surroundings, and so the other part of our audience is the worker, the employee, the person who listens and might be lacking that work with purpose or that energy, or heck, it could be a business owner who lacks that purpose, a CEO who lacks that purpose, that energy. How do you you work with, you support professionals, service providers. How do you reignite that fire in the folks who have lost it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's the why, right? We always have to start with the why and what fuels what we do. You know, like thinking that that trend of success and happiness can just go up and up and up. It's an illusion, right? It's just to me happiness is you know how you feel every day, you know, with all the ups and downs, but the fact that it's like with all of those challenges, I'm contributing to my greater purpose, right? So like all of us and business owners as well, we go through moments of like, okay, I've done all of these. You may lose, that purpose at times because something hasn't worked as well. But I used to think that my purpose was related to the companies, right? And I would wear that T-shirt and drink the Kool-Aid, and then realize like my impact is very limited. I am just fulfilling someone else's dreams, right? I would rather be part of more people's dreams, not just one CEO, right, or one billionaire, right? That is like, I know that just doesn't fulfill me, but I kept seeing that story happening with every opportunity that I had. So I had to take a step back and be like, I have to redefine what my purpose is. My purpose when I was younger was like I want to work, with great companies and great brands and want to learn from all of these great people, absorb like a sponge. But once you've done that and you've been given all of these tools and mechanisms, right? Which I consider in my case a privilege, right? That I've had the opportunity to work with all of these amazing brands, right? Learn from the best people in marketing, in branding, in design, technology. I've seen every single piece of technology being developed for the last 20 years, and I've been part of it because I was building those teams. And I had to really understand, like, wow, this world, once you start seeing under the covers, right, moves so quickly, but most of us have no clue what's going on until someone tells us, here you go, get ready. But then I realized what I truly love and comes from my mother, right, is that she's a public servant, right? And I love helping people. That was my why. When I understood that's what I love doing with whatever tool I have, right? I love helping people. So if we remember that as a business owner, that at the end of the day, you created that company for a reason. I don't think that anyone creates a company so I can become a billionaire. And hopefully that's not the case, for the new generations, which now that you ask them, what does success mean to you? It's like, I want to be a billionaire,
Yes.
right?
It comes
That's
up.
the new standard, not even a millionaire,
No, you're
a
right.
billionaire. So that concerns me because then our mindset is focused on the ultimate goal, and that ultimate goal, you know, can be very troublesome, right? As you start experiencing life and how difficult it is to actually create a business, run a business, and maintain it. So what I always tell, whenever you're losing that fire, whether it's for a project that you're working on or your business, it's always a great time to kind of like take, I don't know, 5 steps back. And as a leadership team, remind yourselves the why. Why did you create this company? What is the purpose of what you're doing? Right? If you're in banking, is it's truly about, getting the most profit out of the money that you're lending, or it's to support communities growth and expand. That's a big difference, right?
Right.
The same, with a wealth advisor, is it to get more fees from your clients, or is it to help them, advancing life, get peace of mind? And I see a big difference when I talk to us, the same professional, right? And one is focused on the outcome, the money, and the other is just like, I just do what I love and I like helping people. And then I see the evolution of those two professionals. The one that is focused on the purpose is thriving. The other one is struggling because it's working so hard to achieve a dream that is founded in money or something material,
Yeah.
rather than something that is inner and important to you.
Here's what's interesting about that. When you just answered the second question, and I didn't realize when I asked it, but it almost feels like that's part of the answer to the first one as well. Is like, how do you stay relevant? How do you stay attractive to this shifting to this workforce with shifting ideals and shifting goals and dreams or aspirations about what they want in their work? They want to work for companies that are led by leaders who are in it to make a difference, right? They really do, like the whole work with purpose thing. Now, feel free to add any more to that question about how do you stay relevant, but that's a springboard for an answer for sure.
Yeah, I think that we're getting lost in kind of like what all of this means to all of us, like to have a career and to have all of these things, right? But when it comes to I think that it needs to be genuine and authentic, and I think that authenticity around businesses right now, it's losing steam and people are seeing through, right? That we being kind of like, oh, we're here to create connection. We are here to do all of these. And then you see behind the scenes and you see kind of like, that that's not the case and people are seeing through those, right? And that's when you go into consumer boycott and all of these things because what you say is not what you mean, right? That's when you assess without naming companies, right? But you can assess a CEO from one company or another, right? And you can poll like the new generations and they'll tell you exactly what they think about them. One has purpose and one is thinking about not just the company but the benefit that the company and the opportunity that that company has had to benefit the world is a crystal clear mission and purpose,
Yeah.
and that is disseminated, right? When your mission statement is, I want to make the world a better place, but your policies, the way that you treat people, the way that you do business doesn't reflect that, right? Gen Xers, we would be like, okay, I'm seeing it. Now, millennials, it's like, I'm seeing it and I don't like it. And I don't want
Yeah.
to be part of that, right? So there's an increase risk tolerance in many ways. But what I'm seeing is also that, that they don't want to conform anymore to what for us was like, we are willing to just sit and wait and go through all of these and suffer through the process
Right.
because we were kind of like afraid of losing our pension, afraid of losing our paycheck and our insurance, right? Uh, And I think that now with technology and the fact that you can actually buy anything you want from anywhere, right? It gives you so many more opportunities, right? And it allows you to actually do things on your own. And that is the inflection point that I'm seeing, right? It's going to become more costly to hire because people are only staying in those jobs for a year and a half or two, when it used to be 7 in average 10 or so years ago.
Yeah.
So that means that you're replenishing all the time. So with AI, you're going to automate a lot of those jobs, right? And really reallocate your cost to what you think is strategic, right? And what needs that human touch aligned with technology. But my question is like, what's going to happen, you know, for people like us, in the 40s, 50s, if you get laid off, can you actually find an opportunity right now that will give you the same, or lateral move or wage? We're not in that stage anymore that is like, oh, I can go and just go to a different opportunity. I'm going to get paid double. That to me is gone. Just a few can enjoy that. But also, you know, my daughter is going to college right now. I'm concerned about, like, I'm seeing the market right now for new
Yep.
grads. They just spend a lot of money and they have all of these student loans and they cannot find a job because those jobs, or are the wages are lowering or they're being automated, right?
Right.
And who was the Google just said, yesterday I think, that in 6 months recruiters and HR will be, completely replaced by AI, right? It's crazy that,
Yeah.
that we're hearing these things without understanding that, we're listening and that we're all kind of like assessing, and that's creating uncertainty. And that makes us less productive, that makes us less everything because we're concerned about the external things instead of like really focusing on what makes us happy, doing a great job, advancing in all of the things that we wanted to do, but that nowadays it's more difficult to actually, follow that trajectory or roadmap.
What you just described is a rapid, fast escalation of a different way of doing business, right? And yet,
Different way, yeah.
and yet, you also early on talked about our humanity, and at least in my experience, because I'm a little older, my humanity has a hard time catching up with that rapid expansion. And so, how do we, as human beings, how do you, you're in the thick of this. How do you for yourself slow down? Certainly you mentioned going back to your why, your purpose, but I think it's more than that.
It's more than that. I think there needs to be an agreement, right? And that's when, corporate culture really needs to be genuine about the fact that they're listening. I think that a lot of, workers got disenfranchised when the pandemic companies allowed for them to work from anywhere and all that stuff. And then they said, we're never going back to that. And then they forced them back. I was at a time in corporate, right? And I was like, this is one of the biggest mistakes you'll make.
Right.
You're going to lose the loyalty, and you have to be projecting severe attrition. So the only way that you're going to be able to deal with that is by really investing in more technology, because you're going to have a hard time. And I don't think that we can play those games with people, right? There's when there's an exchange, like I'm giving you my talent to help you achieve your dreams. You're giving me the opportunity to do that. That's a pretty serious agreement that we have. But do we have equal stakes at it? No, we don't, right? And we all know now that we're all replaceable, and we have to deal with that and understand that better, and not be fearful of a change, whether it's forced or unforced, but to recapture, right, and reclaim that worth that at times we've lost, right, as professionals because we've just been following the script. We can actually reclaim that and be like, if you don't agree with that, you know, go and create your own business. If you cannot find that opportunity that is going to make you whole as a person, as a profession, as a professional, you have options. But you cannot do it while being afraid of the future. You cannot do it whether, I'm going to have enough money to pay for all of the things that I bought and that I need to maintain, right? You have to restructure your budgets. You need to know that, life is more than just materialistic stuff, right? And that we should spend more time in connecting and enjoying those things that we have with people rather than isolating ourselves. And sometimes because we're so tired, because we're working so much, right, that we don't get to enjoy any of that, nor share it with anyone. Because all we want is to recover, unwind, yes, drink a few glasses of wine, right? And then go back at it. And then we do it all over again. So that to me has always been kind of like tough to watch in companies, right? Because I would always be like, everybody's like, how are you doing, right? And people will tell you, I'm okay, I'm fine. I would never accept those answers because those are telling me there's an underlying, struggle. And you cannot just ask, are you sure, right? Because people walk away from it. Okay, good. You're okay, you're fine, I'm out. No, engage. It's just like, hey, what's going on? You have to allow for that connection and that vulnerability and that humanity. That's the most beautiful part of us, right? Not because
Yeah.
you want to absorb all of the drama, but because in that giving and taking of energy and reciprocity and support and empathy is how meaningful connections are created. Not by the elevator pitch, but the way that you show up for everyone and inspire someone so they can inspire someone else.
At some point, every CEO realizes something uncomfortable. They realize that your business has grown faster than some of your leaders have. They're good people, they're loyal people, but really the next stage of the business requires a new level of leadership. Now, the good news is leadership isn't fixed. It's something that can be developed intentionally. And if that's something you want help with, developing your leaders, visit thelionsgroupconsulting.com or call us at 319-541-0488. You know, it's interesting. I feel like if we're being honest, a lot of us there are times where we're relieved when somebody says, "I'm okay," and we can go, "Oh, good." Like I don't have to, as opposed to I'm really not doing well, and they're like, "Oh, crap, now I have to engage." I feel like we've all been in those situations because it's scary, it's messy, it's vulnerable. It's messy to engage with somebody at the level that you're talking about. But I think because of the disconnection that we feel, we're exploring this conversation through the lens of a business podcast. The more technology and automation advance, the more meaningful and valuable, and I feel like a former guest on our show would use the word existential. Like it's existential that you are connecting with your clients, your customers, others. It's existential for us just as human beings because we're meant to be in community. None of us is good in isolation, but also it is a differentiator in a business, right? It is a differentiator. And I'm bringing this back to the organization that you're part of, Luis, ProVisors, which is it's networking specifically for service providers. That's the category that Patsy and I are in, where we provide a service. We provide coaching and consulting to organizations. And a lot of the service providers, because of technology and automation, are they're under fire. There's the danger of becoming a commodity unless you have that differentiator, that ability to connect. I think people still do want to do business with humans, at least today. Now, we'll see if that changes as we get more and more comfortable. But how often do you immediately hit 0 to bypass the automated message because you want to talk to a human being? And if the human being you get on the other side of the phone is cold and there's no connection, then this is a commodity, and I'm gonna look around and find somebody who I actually connect with.
I would prefer that companies, rather than thinking about we are the most innovative, we are this and that, right? That they would go back to like, you can still be profitable, you can still be a great business, you can still make tons of money, right? But you can still have a core mission and principles around people-centric leadership, right? That's what's missing right now. It's always being customer-centric leadership, right? That's been the evolution, right? We do everything for our customers, and that's great. But you would see very quickly how the external customers were treated at this level, while the internal customers are treated like they're worthless.
Absolutely.
It's like you cannot pretend that the people that are actually helping you achieve your dreams and following your customer centrism, right, will execute on that while they're feeling completely the opposite.
Yep.
That is anti-human. It's illogical.
Yep.
But I don't understand why, in that case, the how you treat your internal customer is what's going to reflect on how you treat your external customers, right? And training and, sales strategies and all of those things won't change that, because when we are human at our core, we know what it means to have a connection and a pleasant interaction with someone, right? No matter what, you are driven to help, even in the most difficult circumstances. But if it's a script, that's when people just lose it, right? It's
Yeah.
just like they don't have the energy to deal with that because they're struggling with it themselves. And then they're penalized by performance reviews, they don't get increases and all that stuff. So it's a constant cycle that can only change with a strong culture. And it needs to be built not from the top down or from the bottom up. It's both at the same time, right? So that mid management, people forget about them. It's always upper management and low management. And these mid managers are being squeezed because they have to play on both ends. They want to help, but they want to follow, the script. And those are the ones that end up suffering. So just as in the economy, the middle class, right, is what propels us, right, to create more opportunity and more equity. The same is for mid management. They should not be treated the way that they're treated. They should be treated, and incentivized, because they probably have the toughest job of all of them.
I
It's
certainly
just
think they do.
how
Yeah.
how do we make everyone happy? You can't. You're gonna have to choose, and you're always gonna choose to see, you know, the top.
You are speaking Patsy's language right now. She's. I can
We spent the morning with a group of middle managers, and we could just
Correct.
watch them energetically being and verbally being squeezed, and offering much of what you're talking about is how do we redefine our roles, our workplace? How do we take care of each other and our people? And people, some people look at us like, can I really do that?
Yeah, there needs to be. It's creating healthy boundaries with employees and with employers, right?
Yep.
And to understand that we can still achieve greatness if we would optimize our time, right? And we would have more clarity about what we do and what we're paid to do. We've gotten used to, like, oh, I'm offering you a salaried position, so you're gonna do everything for me. Sometimes people are doing 3, 4 jobs without even getting a raise, right? So I think that there needs to be an acknowledgement that is like, we see your worth, right? And this is not about, the performance review cycle and the fact that, yes, the curve and whether or not I can give and who's top performer, how you're assessing that is just like, look at your organization, whether it's 3 people or 6,000, right? You need to have a pulse on what's going on. And you need to listen, and you have to have the right leaders next to you. The ones who will tell you what you don't want to hear, not the yes people. And unfortunately, a lot of those leaders are surrounded by yes people.
Yep.
And it's not that they don't see it, but they're not telling them the true story until everything implodes. And then it's like, what happened? So now we have to lay off all of these people because the organization didn't perform, but all of those managers on the top remain in their jobs.
Right. Yep.
At some point, there needs to be a recalibration. That's what I propose. Like every 2 or 3 years, recalibrate your leadership to understand where the company's at and what goals. So they need to be retrained and reignite that mission about, like, this is what we're trying to do, and give them an opportunity to say, yes, I want to keep doing this, or like, no. Because we also know that, the same leaders cannot take a company from 0 to 10 million, 10 to 50, 50 to 100, right?
Right.
You need
Yeah.
a completely different mindset. There are people who are builders, right? There are people who love, just creating that and then
Yeah.
hand it over. And they know that. They're great leaders because it's like, I know when I need to exit. I've done what I do best.
Yep.
But they try to be that leader for everything. It's just like, that's when you start seeing organizations struggle, because you're no longer the leader for where the company is and where it's going.
Absolutely right. That's a conversation Patsy and I have with we've had with countless leaders. Honestly, when in the conversation when the leader says, "Well, here's where we are. Like we're at 10 million and we want to get to 15 million," and one of the first questions we'll ask is, "Okay, do you have a $15 million team?" And it's a very it stops most of the leaders in their tracks. Literally, they're like, "Whoa, I hadn't thought about that." And what's most interesting is not only is the answer, honestly, most of the time the answer is I don't. No, I don't have the team that I need to get me to the next level. What's so interesting is so often the team that they have, even at the team, they might be at 10 million, but they don't even have a $10 million team. Like they might have a $7 million team. That is, in fact, that's why they're talking to us. That's usually why they're talking to us, because there's some pain point in the organization that they're looking for help fixing or resolving or removing. And so in the conversation, it's like, okay, do you have a $15 million team? No. Do you have a $10 million team? Oh my gosh, no. I have a $7 million team that is way overperforming right now. And that's why we're feeling these pains. That's why the cracks in the foundation are now showing. Growth creates some problems, but more often than not, growth doesn't create problems. Growth exposes problems.
Yep.
Correct.
And so you're exactly right. But making the hard decisions to level up your leadership team, knowing as hard as that can be, that's how you level up your whole organization. To your point, and it's not necessarily about firing them. It's about equipping them. It's about training and developing them, growing them. Or, to your point, having the hard conversations when somebody says, I don't want to be a $15 million leader. I was very happy at 5 million. I'm way over my head. I'd rather go someplace else and start over again. Great. That's fine. Knowing your passion, finding your purpose, staying in your sweet spot. But if the leader isn't doing that, when the leadership team is struggling, the whole organization struggles with it. And the whole organization struggles to show up and be successful.
If you see it in organizations, right, whenever there's an opening because someone, they struggle to actually find someone within the organization, right? There's no succession plan. They go and hire externally. That creates a whole different problem.
Yep.
Right.
Totally.
Because suddenly new leader, new ideas. I bring my teams, I bring my vendors. Everything that was done is kind of like, now this is the way that we're going to do it, right? So it's just like, I think that the way that you create leaders with that organization, that is a big problem. I think that the HR mechanisms are antiquated in the way that, generally, just because you're a top producer, you become a manager because they give you more money, and someone will say, you know what? No one is going to say, you know what? I'm not going to take the bigger title and the more money. Although I don't like people.
Yeah, I don't want to.
And I should never be in a management position. Like a manager should be that person that understands that you can extract yourself from the equation and think about the success of the team, not yours.
Yes.
And until that happens, right, and until you have a clear assessment to actually, cultivate and incubate and recognize those folks that are thinking in that way and that are truly the ones who are going to propel the organization and help them, with blind spots, and will have the voice, right, and the authority and conviction that they can say those things without retaliation or without not being a team player, right?
Yep.
That to me are the best partners.
Yep.
They want to tell you exactly what you need to hear because it's going to help you, avoid all of these headaches.
Right.
That will come eventually, right, at any given point. And then people are surprised. What happened? It's like this has been cooking for years.
Right. Yep.
You never heard about it?
We see that all the time.
We do. We do.
Luis, okay, let's talk about ProVisors. Give us a chance. Tell our audience, talk about ProVisors, what it is. touched on it a little bit, but how'd you get in it? What does it offer to a service provider who might be looking for, to find their people, like to connect better?
Yeah, I get that question, when it's like, I see that you're doing something different because people have known me, for being in talent acquisition and working with big tech and, all of these things. And then they ask me, it's just like, why ProVisors? And it was a very simple decision. Number one, our current CEO, right? I worked with her 16 years ago.
Oh,
So that's the power of networking.
Yeah.
And one of our VP of memberships, Karen Painter, I worked with her as well. They were in the LA market and I was in Seattle, same company. So we had the opportunity to interact and work together. And there's something about people that when you connect with, you may not talk for a long time, but we would always be in touch, right? Hey, or I would receive an email and it's like, hey, I'm hiring. Do you know anyone in Seattle, right? And then I started understanding it's just like that's just not a message. That is someone who trusts your judgment and is doing it, with purpose.
Right.
Because it's not about recruiting, it's about that, great people know great people. And when we start understanding that, that's how referrals and business and all of that. So when I had that conversation, it was that email. Hey, we're looking for a regional director in Seattle. Do you know anyone? And I was like, yes, me. So we jumped on a call, and I was like, at that point, I was very purposeful about, I don't want to work for big tech anymore. I want to expand on my, the impact that I can create. I've been networking for a long time, and I've seen the trials and tribulations of the old models and the new models. I've been involved in all of these, working with some of the best marketers and branding strategists in the world, the best operations people, all of these things. And it was like, wow, I built an incredible IP that I want to transfer to my community. I don't want to give it to someone else anymore. If I'm going to work and I'm going to do something, it's going to be meaningful. And what a better opportunity to really focus on my community, right? The Pacific Northwest. I live here. These are the movers and shakers, right, of our economies. These are folks that, whether they've had a long tenure career, whether they're an attorney or a banker, or they've actually had the courage and vision to create a business that's been successful. There's no bigger joy than contribute to them in a way that is like, my only job is to make sure that you connect with the right people. And I always tell them, it's like, the more connections and the more friendships and the more your practice evolves, and the more money you make, I'm happy. Because to me, that is the success that I can feel. In bigger corporations, people would celebrate you for a model that you put in place or for growing, your revenue 20, 30% year over year. And then that would fade away quickly. And then suddenly you're just back to the drawing board. It's another year. You can be the hero or the villain this year, right?
Right.
In any capacity. But here it's just like, you can really, help people, whether it's, by helping a professional redefine kind of like their networking strategy or their why or their personal brand, right? So it's fresh and it's not about the elevator pitch, but it's about really connecting to your story. Why do you do what you do? That's my favorite part of the conversations that I have. Because I know what I do. My job is perfectly aligned with my purpose and my why. Helping people, doing it for my community, and creating impact.
And that's obviously where that energy comes from. Or that
I
light.
cannot fake it. I
Yeah.
cannot fake it. It's
Well, you
amazing
don't
when
have
you
to
cannot
fake
fake
it.
it.
I think it's the thing. You don't have to fake it, right? Because it is genuine. It's so funny because just before we jumped on here and started recording with you, I was working with a business owner who was essentially saying that probably been about 2 years, where he's been getting more and more grouchy, more and more grumpy. And we went back to, okay, why did you start this? And his business partner and wife, same person, was on the call. And I said, let's go back to the purpose, go back to the why. Like it's that nothing will distinguish the fire more than forgetting why you're doing what you're doing. To me, it's like, I mean, if I'm just going through the motions and I've forgotten why, I will focus on all of the issues and the problems and the obstacles and the hurdles. But if I'm focused on here's why I'm doing this, that's that, and it has to be a compelling, exciting thing. If it's not compelling, then when those obstacles come, those are reasons to give up, or those are reasons to lose hope, as opposed to those are just minor speed bumps on the way to this big goal that I have, this big objective, this big impact that I want to make on my community, on my family, on the people that work for me. That's what came out of that conversation. I know from prior conversations with those two owners, one of the things that brings them joy is they are later in their career, they're later in their lives, and they have a lot of young people that work for them. And they love, it lights them up to walk through and just like love on these young people, like just encourage them and high five them. And I said, great, when's the last time you did that? Oh, can't even, but when you mention it, they like, yeah, that is, we just love, I mean, they've been involved in youth ministry for a lot. Great. Go light young people up. Go encourage them. That is how you make an impact in your community.
We get lost, life is complicated, so I'm always about control the variables.
Yeah.
I cannot do anything about what's going on out there.
Correct.
But I can definitely do something of the people that are around me in my community, and the fact that we are multidimensional beings. We're just not one avatar that is professional, and I am the regional director with ProVisors. I'm also a musician. I'm also, I have all of these things that make me, who I am.
Right.
I call it the concentric circles of life. That is just like, if you have your purpose in the middle, you need to know where your happiness and your energy contributes to that positivity, and to looking at life in a way that is, that it's constructive and that is always pushing you forward. But that cannot be just your job. You have to give energy to your job, the right amount of energy, to your family, to your friends, to your hobbies, to your pets, whatever it may be, right? Because that energy, those tanks sometimes, are a little empty.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because you put too much energy. Like, that's something that I had to do. I would put so much energy into work, right? Work, until I started understanding. It's like, and I would say all the time, like, oh yeah, I'm a workaholic, proud workaholic. And I was like, wow, that is such a loaded word if you think about it, right? That is saying that you're addicted to your job.
Right.
And no addiction is good,
Nope.
So I had to kind of reestablish those boundaries and be like, I love working and I love helping, but I need to measure the amount of time that I put into it, because otherwise all my other tanks are empty.
Right.
So if that changes, then my entire support system and foundation changes, and it's super tough. But when everything is well distributed, just like risk assessment, right? Something can change, but you still have everything else, and you can replenish that energy easily. When everything falls apart because you've invested in just two things, then that's a tough transition.
It's a tough,
Yep.
which is usually what people get to before they reassess. So I like your idea of recalibrating on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Or doing what I suggested, to a few, senior leaders and VPs, right? To do reverse mentorships.
Yes.
Do reverse mentorships with you're a software development manager or a VP of engineering. Go and talk to your junior person who's a millennial and just join the organization. Ask
Yeah.
what they think about your product. Don't be afraid to ask what they would change, what they don't like about it, and really pay attention. When you're part of a team, there are no titles, right? That's sometimes difficult for people to see. That it's like it's not about superiority. It's about that we're at the same level.
Right.
You can be a VP, you can be the janitor. It doesn't matter. We're all working towards the same mission. So
Yep.
you should be vulnerable, right? And leave your ego away to be like, I'm going to talk to people that I generally don't talk. And I'm going to go away of my circle, of leaders to hear a fresh perspective. And I would say, talk to as many of them and make it a habit that when you hire these folks, that you have lunch or coffee with them. Just pick any day of the week and invite them to have an opportunity. You know what it means to them to have just 30 minutes with a VP in a company? That already tells them the kind of leader you are. That builds
100%.
loyalty. You're giving them your time, the most valuable. They are
100%.
gonna risk, but you don't use that time as just like, hey, here I am, I'm the big shot. Let me tell you about my glory days and everything that I've done. It's about them. Listen,
Yeah.
ask them questions about your products, what they appreciate in leadership, why they joined the company, and never forget that. And
Yeah. And
transfer
what
all of
keeps them there?
those
Yep.
to your managers. It is like, this is the way that we are going to manage our culture, and we're going to make sure that that foundation is always strong because we are all part of it, not just me or just someone else. Cohesiveness in management and organizational development, pretty challenging, but we have
That's
to start
awesome.
somewhere.
That's awesome. I want to work for you someday, Luis.
I know. I'm ready to sign up. Ready to sign up.
All right, Luis, thank you so much for joining us. It's obviously a topic we're all passionate about. If someone is interested in contacting you, speaking with you directly, and if someone is interested in learning more about ProVisors, either joining a ProVisors in their area or just getting better at the whole networking and connection thing, what's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, so you go to provisors.com. There's a section in regions, right? So if you are in Idaho, Oregon, or Washington, those are the regions that I oversee. You can actually see my picture there. You can take a look at all our group leaders. And there's a little form that you can fill, and I'm going to get a meeting request. My phone number is there. Anyone can call me. I love talking to people. Provisors is really intended for tenure seasoned professionals, 10 plus years in the industries. And the professional verticals that we cover are very specific in the way that we curate our groups. So anyone who's in banking, attorneys, CPAs, people in insurance, real estate, business and consulting services, IT, marketing, HR, and I think that covers pretty much the bulk, right? Having a good conversation about what's the why, how do you define success in networking? If you're going to get into networking, let's make sure that you have a solid idea of what you want to achieve, what kind of ROI you're looking for, and what operational framework or networking strategy are you going to use to actually get and take advantage of what the network can do for you. It's all about what you put in and what you get out, right? So that's the magic of networking, but now we can do it with more information, more insights, and the models that I'm building right now with AI applied to networking strategy allows us to actually create more success quickly, because we don't have to do all of this analysis about our ideal referral partners or who could potentially. We can work together, right? Technology can help us assess that
Yep.
rank, and at the same time, where else should I go, right? What other group should I visit? Now technology can give us that, and then we can be super intentional and purposeful without losing our humanity.
Yeah, and it's always nice to have the opportunity to speak about what you do. But Patsy and I both know probably at least a dozen people, if not more, who are part of the ProVisors family, and we've yet to find anybody who doesn't rave about it. So, so you're obviously doing something right. Well done. Congratulations.
Hey, when we connect genuinely, right? I always tell, even I told that to Patsy, right? My goal is that you see value, right? And that, when you join, I don't go away. Like, I care about working with our members and helping them, right? Just like servicing, how can I serve you and how can I make sure that everything that you're gonna do is gonna be successful.
Sure.
If we do that together, great, let's do it.
Yep.
But I am not the kind of person that is like, okay, you join, see you later, right?
Right.
I love connecting one-on-one. I love learning about your business, about how I can connect you and how I can help, right? Because when we do things together, we always get better outcomes than doing it alone.
Awesome. Thank you, Luis. Patsy, any final words? Any I don't know, any words of wisdom?
I think it's another good lesson of we got to go slower and connect ourselves to go faster. It's like we forget about our humanity.
Yeah. Define those KPIs. I always tell them, like, the last thing that I can say, Patrick, is like, what are your KPIs, right? It's just like, oh, I do these 4 meetings, I attend this, and that. Do you have personal KPIs? Reaching out to 2 friends every week. Connecting, if you're away, connecting with your family once a week. Going, if you love music, going to a concert or to a live show once a week. If you're a poet, going to an open mic at least once a month. Do you have those KPIs for your personal life? That's what creates balance.
Yeah.
But we have KPIs for business, but we don't have KPIs for our personal lives. So when we start applying that to our lives, we can see that there's a nice overlap because now we manage things with the same eyes and the same mindset.
Yeah. To me, I've said, I just genuinely believe we're meant to be in community. And all the things you talk about are things that just bring us closer together. So this is a fun topic. Thank you for coming on and helping us unpack it. Helping us, it ties 100% into the business, into personal and professional satisfaction. So Luis Carbo, it was great to have you on. Thank you.
Yes.
Well, it's a pleasure, Patrick and Patsy. So great seeing you and continue shining and doing your, the great work that you're doing.
Thank you. And listener, thank you for sticking with us to the end of another episode of the Frustrated CEO podcast. Please connect with Luis, connect with Patsy Feeman, connect with me. We're all on LinkedIn. You can connect with us there. And I know we talked about earlier, it shouldn't all be about likes and shares, but hey, like and share the show because that'll help us get more, get this message out to more people who I genuinely think need to be in community and in connection. So thanks. We'll see you again next time on the Frustrated CEO podcast.